After my cancer diagnosis at the age of 32, my mom and I talked a lot about the shock of that diagnosis, given several doctors told us you're too young to have endometrial cancer. After much discussion, we began to feel driven to inform and help educate other young women about what symptoms they should be concerned.
Having both been teachers, it seemed natural for us to look for a way to share Alex's cancer journey in order to help other young women avoid such a shocking diagnosis or possibly navigate a similar path. A podcast seemed the best way to get the word out, and that's how Down There Aware was born.
4 years later, our mother-daughter duo has gone from educating and informing to advocacy and action, with a fresh and sometimes very interesting and somewhat humorous multi-generational perspective.
We look forward to sharing with you Season 4 as we advocate, take action, and make it a priority to always be Down There Aware.
Welcome back to another episode of Down There Aware. We're excited that you're here with us in the middle of April.
For our little April chat.
The last couple weeks have been a little research, dense statistics, things like that. Heavy. Important, but
yeah, very.
But heavy. So we thought we would just do a little chatty episode today.
Yeah, I was watching my favorite show.
What is it?
The Today Show. We need to tag them. And I saw a woman who was a very well-known Peloton instructor talking about how she felt a lump in her breast. She went to her doctor. The doctor said it's nothing to worry about. Wait 28 days through a cycle, and it's, probably nothing. She, in her gut, was not comfortable with that, so she went to another doctor, her OB-GYN, I believe, and that doctor even said, I'm not real sure this is anything, but I'm going to do a mammogram and an ultrasound.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. She did both, and the woman had breast cancer. So
she's relatively young too, right? So
yeah,
again, doctors thinking you're not this demographic. You maybe have been tested for BRCA and don't have it. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
and all of that we've heard before, but
it is not unheard of.
As she was talking, she talked about how she has to go in for follow-up scans, and you're familiar with that, and and she mentioned the phrase health anxiety, and it kind of stuck with me, and that's why I mentioned it to you. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. Just what is health anxiety, and how we feel about it in relation to what you've been through.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of folks on the Peach page, if you're familiar, the Facebook group that I joined the day I got the notification that I had cancer, a lot of women on that page call it Scanxiety.
I think that's real specific.
It is. It's very specific. And we talk a lot about when we have to have our CAT scans, or if we're having an MRI or whatever it might be. And particularly the women who are in, for uterine cancer specifically, they're in a cycle of fertility sparing treatment. And so they have to go frequently for biopsies and blood work and other things because they have active cancer that they're trying to, or active precancer that they're trying to stave off so that they can get pregnant and have a child before losing their uterus. And that's a whole other thing. Yeah. But to, have that constant anxiety of, what am I going to see now? What am I going to hear now? What is it? And, I've experienced that in my most recent CT scan a year ago, I think. I lit up.
And those are the words they use.
That's the word they use. You lit up. So I lit up in two places. I lit up in my abdomen and I lit up in my thyroid. And so I had to, actually, this may not have been my most recent one, but anyway, one of my CT scans. And so I had to have further testing. I had to have a thyroid, ultrasound. I had to go through all this blood work, all this stuff. And they ordered me a PET scan. And I had never had a PET scan before. It was, they didn't deem it necessary when I was going through my cancer experience. And so this was very, it was a weird experience to go through something as serious as a PET scan. It was like, what are they going to find?
Especially when you feel like your cancer's gone.
Right. And, because so if it lit up in, what used to be my cervix or in my vagina or my ovaries or down there, if it lit up down there, okay, that's expected, right? Like if anything were going to happen, that's where it would be. But no, it was my abdomen and my colon and it was my thyroid. And I was like, it's a new place. Like, so then that got, into the thinking about, and I think the thing with anxiety is I've heard it described as, you're constantly living in the future. You're constantly living in the potential future of what if, and in the negative potential future of, oh, this is going to happen, or though this could happen. And so when you are waiting for your scan results, I think that's the worst part. You've had the scan, you've gone through it, and then you're just waiting until your next appointment when they can tell you and read the results.
Well, and I hate for it to be negative. I don't think it has to be. I was surprised and a bit disappointed when I first heard health anxiety. I Googled it, and the first thing that came up was hypochondria. And I was kind of angry about that.
Rightfully so.
Because I think there is a bit of anxiety. I wish we could call it something different, trepidation or anticipation or
But you keep wanting to say anxiety.
I know. I just, I think anxiety carries a negative connotation.
It does. Yeah, it definitely does.
And so to be concerned, and you and I kind of go back and forth about this where you're concerned, to be concerned enough to be on top of the situation, I don't see as a negative. I don't see it as anxiety. I see it as being smart. And
you also don't see it as, because I think sometimes anxiety and worry can be interchangeable. And so while you're seeing that as prepared, some people might see that as you're just worrying about that. You're worrying about that. And, like you said, either last episode or the episode before that, you just want your their file folder to be as full as yours is with all of the information. So you just want to know that, everything is what it needs to be for a diagnosis or for treatment plans or anything like that.
And I think to be prepared, you do your homework, you apply to you what is applicable, you communicate with the medical community. I think those are all good things. I'm not a worrier. I don't worry.
I think that's probably a unique trait. I think most people aren't as, and we've talked about this before, and so Mom's not going to take offense to what I'm going to say, but you're a lot older than I am. And
well, that's the reality. Why would I be offended at that?
Because some people take offense at talking about age. I know you don't, but I have to clarify for the audience that it's okay for me to say that.
Yes. It's okay.
Because you had me when you were 33, so you're 33 years older than I am. Like, that's how time works, right? It just makes sense. But you've lived a lot. My point in saying that is you've lived a lot more life than I have. You've lived through different experiences than I have. And while I feel like I can learn a percentage of what you have experienced from your experience in how you're teaching and talking to me about things, sometimes you just have to go through it yourself.
And I hear that.
And so I think that, and not that it's only age, because I think older people can be worrisome too, just as younger people can be at peace too. But yeah, I think some people might tend to lean one way more than the other. I try not to worry, but I'm I don't know, like a what ifer. I am always running through in my head about situations what if this happens? What if that happens? How am I going to respond if A happens or if B happens? What will my life look like if, and I think that is some of my frustration with how I was diagnosed or how I received my diagnosis, is that I had no preparation for what if this is cancer.
Yeah,
because it was not a possibility.
Everybody told you it's not cancer.
Right. It's not going to be that. And so I think a little bit of health anxiety, like you said, can be positive because you can start to prepare. You can start to formulate the questions you're going to ask, should you receive that diagnosis.
Well, and I do think it's a matter of semantics. I think just because you're preparing and you go over things in your head doesn't mean it's worry.
No.
I think if it kind of eats away at you and you get headaches or stomach aches or you
or if you're
can't
losing
sleep
or can't eat.
I think then I would categorize it as worry. But I think the preparation, the discussing it, a lot of people don't want to talk about things because
that's not me at all.
It's not me either. Here we are just chatting
away.
They don't want to talk about things because they don't want to appear that they're worrying or that they're weak or that.
Well, and I've also heard people don't want to talk about things. I don't relate to this, but they don't want to talk about things because then it makes it real. And I get that, but I describe myself as a realist with a healthy dose of pessimism. I am not a glass half full kind of person. I really try to look at life as that happened, move on, and for whatever reason, but that is who I am. And so I think I look at things like that. So if I talk about it, whatever. Yeah. But someone who is hoping for a better result or doesn't want to jinx the situation or doesn't want to, I think that can lead to further anxiety once you do have the diagnosis because you haven't prepared anybody or yourself.
Right. And I like to prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
And then
what do you call that?
I call it hugging
the mountain. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Learned that from my dad. You don't see how close you can get to the edge without falling off. You hug the mountain.
And for the child who grew up in Central Florida, that did not make a lot of sense until I drove on my first mountain road. And then I was like, I got it.
Not only drove on your first mountain road, we had to turn around.
That wasn't my first mountain road, but yeah, that was scary. But we digress. Yeah, I think there's, with everything in life, you have to strike a balance. Yeah. I think just like similarly, thrill seekers, they have a certain kind of fear of what they're doing, but a confidence about it too. It's this
they call
balance.
It a healthy fear,
right? It's that balance. I think of you have to be afraid of what you're going to do because jumping off a building with a parachute, that's terrifying, but also have to conquer some of that fear in order to take that leap. And I think it's similar with health anxiety. You can be anxious about your diagnosis. You can be anxious about your scan, your follow-up, whatever. But you also have to have confidence in you're going to be able to handle whatever comes at you.
Right.
That it doesn't just take over.
When you go into surgery, you have to sign a lot of paperwork. And
tons.
They ask you always, do you have a healthcare surrogate? Do you have a living will?
And even after, side note, all of the surgeries I've been through, my answer is still no to all of those things.
Well, yeah, you probably need to get
to get on it.
My last
That's a whole
surgery,
other episode.
I made sure I had those things because I hadn't done it before then. But I just thought, that's kind of crazy. It's hugging the mountain and nothing happened that I
Everything was
needed
fine.
Any of that, but it was there if needed. I also that was the time Alex couldn't go and my husband couldn't go because he was at a funeral of a family member. And so my neighbor, bless her heart, she came and sat in the waiting room and I gave her this file folder of stuff, and on it were like 20 phone numbers of people she might need to contact. And I ran across that the other day and I thought, oh, poor Victoria. I kind of overdid that. But that was me hugging the mountain.
Yeah. And, it's the same way I feel about when I was teaching and I took my kids to a performance assessment at another school, and I had 100 sixth grade girls performing in this concert, and I had an emergency form for all of them, parent information. It was in a nice binder, alphabetized, great. And I thought, I'm never going to need this, but I'm going to have it just in case. Sure enough, as we're getting on the stage, a girl fell and hit her head, and I had to have somebody, I gave them the book and I said, here's her name. And they took her to the hospital and they handled it, but it was fine because I was prepared.
Yeah.
And, I was, had a little bit of anxiety of, okay, I'm taking all of these sixth grade 100 girls on this trip and I have to be prepared. I'm a little anxious about it. But again, if you have that preparation, and you know what you're going to do if something happens. And so that's like when I get a scan, if I know, okay, what is my plan? Should it come back negative? What am I going to do next?
Should it
what
come
is
back
my
positive?
Yes. You know what I'm. See, that's confusing. Positive is
negative is good in this
sense, yeah. But yeah, if it like say a scan comes back and it lights up and they do a biopsy or whatever and it is cancer again. Well, what are my options? I still have ovaries. You can take those out. Like there are still options. I haven't had chemo or radiation therapy yet. Those are options. Like there is always something, until you're terminal, which is a whole other discussion. But
I keep looking down because Sadie is down there and she just laid
she's just resting in
on my foot.
the afternoon sun.
And now
she's
her
just
tail
chilling.
is just a wagging because she heard me say her name.
And now my watch is going on. This episode is taking a turn. It's derailed.
It's a crazy, lots of anxiety. No, but I really do believe a healthy attitude about what is happening, enough that it causes you to prepare and just be ready for whatever is ahead, the different scenarios, is a good thing. And I hate that the first thing up on Google was hypochondria, because I don't believe that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think, I think people get a bad rap for when you want to be prepared for something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have, we've talked about this before. I have felt that I have had so much wrong with me that people might think I'm a hypochondriac just because I, do have X, Y, and Z, and I do have to have certain accommodations and all these certain things. But it's just a matter of fact, and you can't be afraid that someone's going to think you're faking it or whatever.
Well, and I have felt in my role the same way when we've gone in, especially when you were younger, not an adult, that the medical personnel might think I have Munchausen.
Yeah.
Because this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I've had enough medical personnel say positive things to me. One time in particular, I remember we were at Shands and we were getting a test on your optic nerve because of your pseudotumor diagnosis. And the PA there was taking your history and was writing things down, and she asked about something, and I said, yes, she has hidradenitis suppurativa. And she looked at me and said, you go, Mom. And I thought, well, somebody appreciates that I remember. But there are times when, you feel, they look at you like, really? She's got that much wrong with her? That you feel kind of like, honestly, just look at her file.
Yeah. Well, and that's, when I'm fortunate that when I moved from Orlando, I had a long-term primary care physician. And then when I moved here, I established a relationship, and I have been with that doctor for over a decade since I've been here in Tallahassee. And so he not only has my adolescent history of medical issues, but he has walked through everything with me. And so he's seen, no, this is actually, happening in her life, and it's all believable. And
he's my doctor,
and
as
he's
well.
your doctor too. And so he always asks about Mom when I have my checkups and stuff. And he asked me questions in my annual exam. He's like, so that surgery is the only surgery you had? And he's also, because you've established a relationship with them. Like when I was in Texas and I had a horrific experience with my back injury, and they wouldn't prescribe me medication. And I needed to get home, and I was in so much pain, crippling pain. And I called him, and he even called the emergency room doctor to see if he could transfer or order it, and he would fill it or whatever. But Texas has a law that they don't do that. But he went to bat for me.
Oh, he went way above and
beyond. And even to the point of, I needed at that time a narcotic painkiller, which is obviously regulated and heavily monitored. But he knew me, and he knew that if I was calling him, and I just said, I need 2 days worth to get me home, and then I will see a doctor. But I'm thousands of miles away.
He didn't question.
He did not question me. And so I think having that open, honest relationship with your doctor can help ease some of the anxiety of things. I think there's always going to be a level of anxiety there. And you can't avoid it. You just kind of have to trust it and be as prepared as you can be.
Well, and we also have the same cardiologist, and one of the last times I was in to see him, I had a little issue going on, and he walked in the door, but you had just had surgery, and he walked in the door and he said, I'm going to talk about what's going on with you, but before that, how's Alex? And that's kind of a neat thing to have developed those relationships with your doctor. So they know you, they trust you, they care about you. There's nothing like it.
No, there really isn't.
And it eases the anxiety.
It does. And I think something else, and we touched on this, that eases the anxiety is just information. And with the internet, information is so readily available. And I know the internet can be a scary place because there are people that are just putting stuff up there that's wrong and incorrect. But if you look at reputable sources, if you look at trusted, information, then it can really help. Something that helped me the night I got my diagnosis, I was out of town. I was alone in a hotel room. I was not going to sleep that night. And so I ordered my comfort food. I had some sushi, and I got on the internet and I looked up YouTube videos of people's personal experiences with this kind of cancer. I read articles about things. Now, I had to kind of temper it because there was some doomsday stuff in there. But looking at what are they? Survival statistics, looking at, when found early, what kinds of treatments, I felt very educated and very prepared to have that conversation with the doctor. And that group I joined, they have an information page, questions you should ask on your first visit. It's at the very top of the group when you join. And that's just experiential, right? All of these women who've gone through this, these are the questions you really need to ask. And it's a living document. People keep adding to it. So that is something, just keeping yourself informed. And if there's the potential to, my anxiety spiked of, you have cancer, sky high, what is going to happen? It ranged from, you're going to lose your fertility to you could die. That's a huge range of outcome there. And so kind of narrowing the gap there of what my options were and what I could do, being able to bring that into my first appointment really helped things go smoothly.
Yeah. So I think the point is a healthy perspective about what's happening, preparing yourself, developing relationships long before any issue presents itself. If you already have that relationship, then it's so much easier going into a crisis. And, we've experienced many of those.
Yep.
But if you already have those relationships built and nurtured, health anxiety doesn't become a negative thing and isn't looked at as Munchausen's or hypochondria or anything, but more just we can get rid of the word anxiety maybe.
Yeah. And, like you said, building those relationships, it's a reminder to have a regular gynecologist, have your annual pap smear, get a mammogram, have a primary care physician who you see for an annual physical. Build these, you don't need all the specialists we need until you need them, but these baseline, your regular doctors are really important to build those relationships so that they can not only be there and support you, but that they can go to bat for you if need be, during a trying time, should that come up.
Yeah, I'm a big cheerleader of family physicians, because every time I go, which is usually once a year, unless I have
something
an issue,
happens,
they say, when was your mammogram? When was your last colonoscopy? Are you up to date on your shingles and flu vaccine, pneumonia vaccine? I mean, they have your chart in front of them.
Right.
And so they are kind of the overseer of your health care. And then they send you on to the people who do the things for you. But they are the ones who keep you on track.
Yeah. And it's very helpful. I mean, I just got my tetanus booster, and that's only every 10 years.
Yeah.
So that who's going to remember when they got their tetanus booster?
Exactly.
Unless you stepped on a rusty nail or something, you know?
Yeah.
So, good chat.
Yeah.
I like these little chatty episodes. They, it gives a nice little break from the heaviness
all the numbers
and the density of numbers and statistics. But, we will see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Down There Aware. Be sure to like and subscribe on our new YouTube channel, as well as on your favorite podcast platform. You can find us at Down There Aware on all social media sites: Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. If you have it, we're there at Down There Aware. You can learn more on our website, www.downthereaware.com, and always get in touch with us, downthereaware@gmail.com. See you next week.